12 towns in the UK that vanished without a trace. Britain is often seen as timeless. Ancient castles, cobbled streets, and villages that seem untouched for centuries. Yet not all places endured. Across the UK lie stories of entire towns that disappeared. Some were swallowed by the sea, others drowned under reservoirs, and a few were abandoned by their own people. These 12 towns in the UK that vanished without a trace were once full of laughter, trade, and everyday life. Today, they are gone, leaving behind ruins, memories, and whispers of the past. 12. Ashopton, Derbyshire. Once nestled in the Derwent Valley, Ashopton was a small but vibrant village with its own church, shops, and inns. Families lived there for generations, farming the land and working in local trades. But in the 1940s, the decision to create the Ladybower Reservoir sealed its fate. The entire village was demolished before the valley was flooded. Today, Ashopton lies beneath the reservoir's waters. When droughts lower the water levels, ghostly remains, from roads to building foundations, sometimes resurface, reminding visitors of the community that once thrived there. 11. Old Winchelsea, East Sussex. In medieval England, Old Winchelsea stood proudly as a port town on the Sussex coast. Ships docked here to trade wool, wine, and grain. The town even had its own fortifications and political voice, but coastal life was fragile. In the late 13th century, devastating storms struck. Whole sections of Old Winchelsea were swept away, leaving it uninhabitable. Its people were forced to rebuild inland, creating what we now know as New Winchelsea. The original Winchelsea, however, was lost to the sea. Nothing of it remains but its story, a cautionary tale about the unforgiving power of nature. 10. Hall Sands, Devon. The tale of Hall Sands is one of human error colliding with natural force. Perched on Devon's south coast, Hall Sands had stood for centuries, home to generations of fishermen. But in the early 1900s, dredging began offshore to supply materials for the expansion of Devonport Dockyard. This dredging stripped away the protective shingle bank. Without it, the sea advanced relentlessly. In January 1917, a violent storm roared across the coast, toppling houses and making the village uninhabitable overnight. From nearly 40 homes, only one remained. Today, visitors can still see the ruins clinging to the cliff, ghostly skeletons against the backdrop of the sea that destroyed them. 9. Capel, Wales. Capel holds a unique and painful place in modern Welsh memory. It wasn't abandoned by nature or chance, it was deliberately drowned. In 1965, the Derwent Valley was flooded to create a reservoir supplying water to Liverpool. The decision was hugely controversial. Despite passionate protests, the village was sacrificed. Homes, a chapel, and even the school vanished beneath the water. The drowning of Capel became a rallying cry for Welsh nationalism, a symbol of cultural loss imposed by external power. When the reservoir's levels fall, stone walls and the outlines of buildings sometimes reappear, like ghosts resurfacing from the depths. 8. Warren Percy, Yorkshire. Nestled in the Yorkshire Wolds lies Warren Percy, the most studied deserted medieval village in Britain. At its height, it was home to dozens of families who lived in timber-framed houses, farmed the land, and attended the parish church. But by the 16th century, Warren Percy was abandoned. Historians believe the enclosure movement, the shift from crop farming to sheep grazing, forced villagers off the land. The Black Death and harsh winters may have accelerated its decline. Today, the ruined church stands alone, surrounded by grassy mounds marking where cottages once stood. Managed by English Heritage, it is a haunting window into a vanished world. 7. Kenfig, Wales. Kenfig's story is one of slow suffocation. This once bustling medieval borough thrived near the Glamorgan coast, with a castle, marketplace and community life. But by the 15th century, Encroaching sand dunes had begun to smother the town. Blown inland by fierce coastal winds, the sand crept relentlessly, burying streets and homes. Villagers eventually gave up the fight and abandoned Kenfig. Today, the ruins of Kenfig Castle still poke out above the dunes, and archaeologists believe much of the settlement still lies hidden beneath the sands. Walking through Kenfig's landscape is eerie. It feels as if the town is merely asleep beneath its sandy shroud. 6. Ravenspurn, East Yorkshire. Ravenspurn, sometimes called Ravens are Odd, was once a prominent town on the Holderness coast. It was significant enough to be visited by kings. Henry IV landed here in 1399 before claiming the throne. But the Holderness coast is Europe's fastest eroding shoreline. Ravenspurn fell victim to the relentless advance of the North Sea. By the 17th century, it was completely gone, its location now underwater. Only chronicles and maps remain to prove its existence. Ravenspurn's fate underscores the precarious balance of coastal life in medieval England. 5. Cwmorthyn, North Wales. Cwmorthyn sits in a valley near Blaenau Festiniog, once alive with the sound of slate being split and carried. Families built homes near the lake, forming a close-knit mining village. When the slate industry faltered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Cwmorthyn's population dwindled. Abandoned cottages now sit roofless, while chapels slowly crumble into the landscape. The setting is hauntingly beautiful. Mist clings to the lake, and silence fills the air where once hammers and laughter rang. Today, hikers pass through its ruins, often describing Cwmorthyn as one of the eeriest ghost villages in Britain. 4. Dunwich, Suffolk. Dunwich was once a powerhouse of medieval England, a port city rivaling London in importance. With 8 churches, bustling harbours and political influence, it was a place of great pride. But storm surges in the 13th and 14th centuries, coupled with relentless coastal erosion, swept much of Dunwich into the sea. Over centuries, its harbour silted up and its economy collapsed. Today, Dunwich is a small village. Beneath the waves lie the remains of streets, homes and churches. On stormy nights, locals say the muffled sound of church bells can still be heard from the sea. 3. Imber, Wiltshire. Imber's story is uniquely tied to World War II. In 1943, its residents were ordered to leave so the military could use Salisbury Plain for training. They packed up their lives, believing they would return. But the promise was never fulfilled. After the war, Imber remained under military control. Only the church and a few buildings are preserved, while the rest of the village stands silent. Occasionally, the church opens to the public, drawing visitors who walk its abandoned streets, imagining the lives left behind in 1943. 2. St Kilda, Outer Hebrides. St Kilda is one of the most haunting abandoned places in Britain. For centuries, its islanders lived in extreme isolation, harvesting seabirds, sheep, and fish. Their lives were hard but uniquely adapted to their remote world. By the early 20th century, contact with the outside world made survival harder. Illness, declining population, and lack of resources pushed the community to ask for evacuation. In 1930, the last residents left. Today, their stone homes remain roofless but intact, battered by Atlantic winds. St Kilda is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, empty but immortal. 1. Tyneham, Dorset. Tynham's fate mirrors Imber's but carries its own heartbreak. In 1943, families in this Dorset village were ordered to leave, giving up their homes so the military could prepare for the D-Day landings. They left notes on doors, promising they would return. But the return never came. To this day, Tyneham remains under Ministry of Defence ownership. Visitors wander through the silent schoolhouse, where exercise books are still on desks, and the old church, where names of villagers are carved into memorial plaques. Tyneham is not just a ghost village. it is a preserved snapshot of Britain's wartime sacrifices. These 12 towns in the UK that vanished without a trace tell stories of storms, wars, sand and sacrifice. Some were drowned deliberately, others abandoned through force or fate, and many simply lost to nature. Though gone, they remain powerful reminders of how fragile communities can be. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell.